The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Manfromleng. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with our reviews of the player cards in the Path to Carcosa Investigator Expansion. We are turning our attention to the survivor cards in the box. In this episode, we discuss Cherished Keepsake, Gravedigger Shovel, Lantern, and Madame Labranche. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or cards that are good in one particular deck get a Bless token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the list of taboos or are simply bad for the big game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. You all rock. If you'd like to be amazing like these people and support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty, Nicole Fiscus, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for their contributions to the channel. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We are making our way through the player cards in the Path to Carcosa Investigator Expansion. We have moved on to the Survivor cards after a pretty interesting batch of Mystic cards. How are you guys doing today?
Oh man, I'm doing great. How about you, Matt?
Man, you look like you just like came out of the sauna there. Is that a bathrobe you're wearing from like the country club?
No, but now I kind of wish it was.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Man, it's been cold out here. Man, I can go for a sauna. We should go over to Finland, go crash JP's house and use his sauna. Yeah, that's what we should do.
First card we're going to talk about is Cherished Keepsake. It is a free asset with a willpower skill icon, item, and charm trait. And it has 2 sanity, and it takes up an accessory slot. Everyone's favorite teddy bear was very good upon release and remains a very cheap, easy way to provide 2 sanity. Thoughts?
I mean, you can't beat the price of free.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true, because I remember before this, you had basically nothing in the core set for a survivor to soak sanity. You have Peter Sylvester, like the most amazing sanity to soak ever, but still, even at level 0, Peter Sylvester is it's like okay, because you can only soak 1 sanity at a time. But then I think this one really like gives you that nice padding that you really need, and it means you don't have to rely on Peter Sylvester for sanity soak. So
Also a nice nice item to recur with scavenging if you're going that route too.
That's true. There's also the York set, so it means York can like. Oh man, that's funny. I imagine he throws the teddy bear at people, and then he has to like pick it back up and dust him off, and then I can cry. I could talk to you again. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a nice companion to Leather Coat from the core set too.
Yeah.
So now survivors are, well, they're good at surviving.
They're good at surviving. Yeah.
Yeah, and they did fill all that blank space with some of the best flavor text in all of Arkham.
Aw, Mr. Potterson.
Yeah, not a whole lot to say about this one. It's free and has 2 sanity, and given survivors' ability to recur items and or survivor cards, this one can return repeatedly. The only conflict you kind of end up in sometimes is with the accessory slot, but usually decks prefer sort of either this or Lucky's Rabbit's Foot, or they generally pick one and go with it rather than invest in something like the what's the neutral asset that neutral permanent?
Relic Hunter?
Oh,
Relic Hunter. Yeah. How would you guys rate this one?
I'd give this a +1. It's a very solid card, and I think to expand on your point, Manfromleng, you could certainly play this and Rabbit's Foot together if you really wanted to. You could play the Rabbit's Foot early, draw a few cards, and then once you get later into the scenario and you need some soak, like this is a really easy way to do that. It's also nice too if you don't want to play Peter, or if someone else needs to play Peter, you can still use this as really good sanity soak. So I think +1 is a good rating for this card.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go a step further and actually just give it an Elder Sign, because I've discovered that like whenever I've built a survivor deck, like it's just kind of by default this is in it. You know, at level 0, right? I just like Rita, boom, Wendy, boom, Patrice, boom. Although she can do what's it Holy Rosary, but I had to think about it. You know, that's the point. Yorick, bam, it's in there. Yeah, so I think yeah, I'd say I'd give this another sign because it's one of those where it's like a Survivor staple. And it's one of those cards it can start off in the list and then you have to take it out. You know, it's like kind of that stapley. Yeah, it's just good stuff, good value.
Yeah, I would have given this a +1, but I think for the flavor text alone, it bumps it up to an elder sign. I do like the little story about Wendy and her bear, and really adds a little something to the card that many other cards are missing. And they didn't let all that blank space go to waste, which they have done on some other cards in the game. So, but I do agree. This is usually a card you end up taking out of your deck. It starts in the deck, and then you would take it out for some reason. There is an upgraded version of this as well. So if you do like what it is doing, you can certainly upgrade this card as well. The next card we're going to talk about is Gravedigger Shovel. This is a 2-cost asset with a combat skill icon, item, tool, weapon, and melee trait. As an action you can fight, you get +2 combat for this attack, or you can take an action to discard Gravedigger Shovel, discover 1 clue at your location, and it takes up a hand slot. I have used this card in Survivor for its discover 1 clue at your location, because it is fairly easy to recur with the Survivor card pool. As a weapon, however, man, this thing is often disappointing due to the lack of bonus damage, and often makes me sad because it just takes too much to kill stuff. Thoughts?
Yeah, it is good for the clue investigation or the clue discovery, because survivors don't really have at least at the time of a release, they didn't have a lot of good ways of getting clues off high shroud locations. And so this was really one of the only good ways of doing that. Because it was it's actually relatively hard sometimes to fail by, 2 or less when you only have 2 intellect.
Right, you're talking about the case of like Yorick. Yeah, I can see that. Because like Wendy you can kind of get there, but
Yeah,
Yorick,
Wendy can access her rogue stuff, and she's got high intellect, but Yorick, he doesn't have that luxury, especially in lower player counts where you need to kind of shoulder that responsibility a bit more. This card becomes useful. I wouldn't say it's very good, especially as you expand your collection, but it does serve a role.
Yeah, we have things like Old Keyring now, which kind of like do it better, I gotta admit. How would you look at the Gravedigger Shovel compared to like Flashlight?
You would definitely play Flashlight over this, but I could see playing 1 shovel for when you need the clue off the high shroud location. Because like with Yorick at least, you're even with Flashlight, you're still 2v2, and then you would still need to commit something anyway. Whereas, this is a little slower in that it takes 2 actions to actually get the clue, but you get the clue.
So the key thing about Yorick is that when he recurs an asset, it goes right into play. So I guess what I'm saying is like if you were to rely on scavenging to do this over and over, that sounds kind of terrible. Because you got to have good intellect in order to trigger scavenging, and then you got to pull it into your hand, then you got to play it, and then you got to use anher action to use the shovel.
And it's like if you're using scavenging, you've already discovered the clue anyway. So
exactly.
Sort of unnecessary at that point.
Yeah, I feel like also as a weapon, like at this time in the game, I mean, not for Yorick because Yorick has Guardian access, but like at this time in the game, like there really weren't a lot of Survivor weapons, but Fire Axe. Like that was about it at this point, right?
You had that and Baseball Bat, basically.
Oh yeah, and then the Baseball Bat, which is underrated. I like the Baseball Bat. Okay, so as a weapon, it's not that great because you still had Fire Axe and Baseball Bat at this point. Okay, so you're really doing it for the clue. Okay, and it just sounds like it's really like a Yorick thing. It's like another signature for him. Plus, you get to you could have dreams of him being the shoveler from Mystery Men, played by William H. Macy. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah.
And I mean, it's very thematic for him to have, right? I mean, he's literally holding it in his portrait art, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is a tool for a very specific job when you're generally playing through a scenario. There's usually that one high shroud location you need to get through, and if you don't have any other means of getting it, this is one way you can guarantee that. Spending 2 resources and 2 actions to do it is pretty expensive, and it's not the type of card you can recur a lot unless you are playing somebody like Yorick who has it built in. Like if you're playing a card like Resourceful, I would say there are better cards to be grabbing than the shovel, but it is nice to have a shovel in your discard pile if you end up at a location where you're like, how am I going to get this clue? Okay, I can recur my shovel and get it. So I think it's probably worth 1 copy in certain decks if you can get it back, but I think trying to recur it repeatedly outside of Yorick is tough. I mean, you can use it to fight as well, and sometimes if you are just fighting a 1 health enemy and just need to do 1 damage, +2 is better than nothing. But it's if you end up facing anything with more than 1 health, you're going to be very unhappy to have this.
It seems like just a middling card all around. Like both of its functions need to be pretty middling.
There is also an upgrade for the Gravedigger Shovel. I will put it up on screen. I can't recall which set it came out in.
Return to the Path of Carcosa.
Return to the Path, okay. And I have never played the upgraded shovel because the shovel is, I think it's good enough as it is for what you want to use it for. And I think as the card pool has grown, survivors have just gotten better ways of doing this.
Active investigation. Yeah.
How would we rate this one?
Like, part of me wants to give it a 0, part of me wants to give it an Elder thing. I think at the time it was probably a 0, but I think as time has gone on, it slowly creeps down into the Elder thing territory. It's you're playing it for its utility mostly. You're playing it for the fact that it gets a clue, you can recur it, and then maybe get another one at some point later in the game, and maybe beat a swarm of rats with it. But other than that, it's pretty middling.
Yeah, I'm also gonna do Elder thing as well. As soon as you own the Stella starter deck, you get Old Keyring, and that just kind of outclasses this. Also, you have Baseball Bat. So even if you're playing Yorick, I feel like for a weapon, I think Baseball Bat's a bit stronger because it deals 2 damage.
Yeah, but it takes up 2 hands.
It does. Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is, like, if you're gonna fight things, I think Baseball Bat does the job a bit better. And also Yorick gets Machete because he does have the he gets Machete, he gets 45 automatic, so he has a bit more. He has Guardian access as well. So if you need it as a weapon, I think they're better weapons. And if you need clue getting, I think honestly, I'd say either a card we're going to talk about pretty soon, or events like Yorick can take Scene of the Crime, and then of course Old Keyring later on. I think it's a bit more Yoricky. Yeah, so I feel like you could do like Fire Axe and Old Keyring as your blue weapon combo, and you don't even have to touch the Gravedigger Shovel anymore.
Yeah, so, but again, that wasn't a thing when this was original.
That's true. This is all true. Yeah, so I'd say I'm gonna go Elder thing on this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree that these days this is definitely in Elder thing territory. It does a thing, doesn't do it particularly efficiently. But I'm going to go 0 just because it does discover a clue without making a skill test. And survivors tend to have average to below average intellect. And so having a shovel at level 0, depending on how your build is going, it's not the worst thing in the world. I have used it to good effect in some scenarios. But yeah, it's probably closer to an Elder thing, all told. There's just better tools available these days than this one, especially now that some recent survivors are tending to get average to above average intellect in some cases. So so things like the shovel are are not as required. The next card is the complement to the shovel. This is the lantern. This is a 2-cost asset with an intellect, skill icon, item, and tool trait. As an action, you can investigate. Your location gets -1 shroud for this investigation, or you can take an action to discard the lantern to deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity, and it takes up a hand slot. I think when Lantern came out, I was enthusiastic about it, and then just have never played it. Because taking an action for -1 shroud for a survivor that can't really investigate well to begin with hasn't really appealed to me. And then you can use it to take out those annoying whippoorwills, but yeah, it just never makes the cut for me. What do you guys think about this one?
You pretty much stole the words out of my mouth. This thing is pretty much just there to kill whippoorwills, which at the time was very useful to have, but now there are just much more efficient ways of dealing with them. But I mean, at the time, like, you would play this and then discard it and kill the whippoorwill, which is about the same action economy when you think about
yeah,
having
because
to
you'd have to
and then
engage the
fight
whipper.
it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
in that case, it's really not that bad.
yeah, I kind of like this thing actually because okay, so unlike the Gravedigger Shovel, so the Gravedigger Shovel, like, it does 2 things like not very well, but it doesn't like get around any restrictions. Whereas I feel like the lantern, what I like about it is that it gets around, especially the discard to deal a damage. It gets around the restrictions, like having to be engaged with the thing. You can ping like a cultist that's engaged with somebody else without having to worry about hitting them. Because remember, it's Tesla's damage, which is just nice to have. So what I like about the investigate bit is because it subtracts shroud. Like I think it's almost like an infinite use flashlight, and what it does is it kind of synergizes with things like Liquid I found. Yeah, whereas like flashlight, you run out of charges and you can't damage things with it. So I actually kind of like the lantern because I feel like it does 2 things middlingly well, but you they kind of either synergize with other things survivors have, in the case of the investigate, and also I like the fact that it's just auto damage and you could hit aloof things, which like you can't do with a Gravedigger Shovel. It gets around some of the it's a little special. Yeah.
Plus, if you kill a whippoorwill with it, you can immediately recur the lantern back with Yorick.
Oh yeah, that's true. It just goes right back in your hand.
You discard it, kill it, and then you just play it again.
Oh man, just so many jokes with Yorick and like like Mjolnir with like he like throws his lantern.
I'm wondering with our different perceptions of Lantern whether it comes down to multiplayer versus solo, because I find that in solo, taking the action to drop this thing on the table and spending the resources, I don't know if it does enough in solo to warrant. I mean, I love the direct damage without requiring a test. I mean, that's the biggest problem with whippoorwills is, A, you've got to engage them, and then you have to take a test to kill them, and that test is subject to the whippoorwill's negative modifiers, which can hurt from time to time, whereas this just deals with them and you don't have to worry about that sort of thing. So maybe I need to give Lantern another try.
I would say give it a try in Dunwich specifically. I think as campaigns have gone on, enemies just get too damn bulky for this thing.
Oh, but yeah, you're right.
Whippoorwills and swarm of rats and just annoying little things like that. It's really actually pretty good at dealing with that. And Dunwich also has relatively lower shroud values, and so that -1
that's
is
true.
Pretty
Not
good.
Everything's 3 and 4 like in Innsmouth or something. Yeah.
So generally, it's like Dunwich actually requires you to get a good amount of clues off of a bunch of lower shroud locations, and this is actually pretty helpful in that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like about this, especially when you get into higher player counts, because you have the old keyring nowadays, but that only gets you 2 clues. It's good, especially if you're playing like someone like Yorick and you can recur it over and over, gets you only 2 clues. But this thing, the fact that you can like drop a 3 shroud down to a 2 shroud like repeatedly, if you're running Liquid I found in your deck, I think it's like that's what I really like about it, to be honest. I played a whole campaign with a theme of dropping shrouds to 2. Just to be covered by Liquid I found. I didn't go for like the Shadowlight, drop it to 0. I went to drop to 2. That way, Liquid I found was like the real engine there. Yeah, and like that's why I use Lantern, because I didn't have to worry about running out of charges. I just like drop shroud to 2. Drop all 3s became 2.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then look what I found would cover me. So I think I've had some good experiences with it, and I think it's pretty decent. Yeah, and Nate, you're right. Lower shrouds, lots of clues. Like this will pan out, as opposed to flashlight, which you'll run out of charges.
I will mention that this does run into trouble occasionally because you have to take the investigate action on the lantern itself,
Yes.
which can create conflicts sometimes.
Yeah,
Doesn't
no
happen-
comboing with winging it.
Yeah, doesn't happen that often, but yeah, if you're using the lantern to investigate, then you're not using other tools to investigate, and sometimes you're required to take investigate actions that are on locations themselves, or there's always that weird where doom awaits thing, I believe, that can throw this into issues as well. So how do we rate this one?
I think if you're playing 2-player, 3-4-player, I'd give it a 0. I think in solo it's just a little too slow, aside from maybe in Yorick. And in Yorick it's pretty good. But aside from that, yeah, it's okay. Like, I know we kind of talked it up a bit, but it's definitely a card you wouldn't be sad to miss, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. In solo, you just don't have to discover as many clues. So like flashlight and old keyring can really carry you. Yeah, because like the lack of like the charges on the flashlight and the keyring are not as big a deal, I'd say. So like, yeah, if you're in multiplayer and if you're gonna discover clues, you're gonna need more charges, over time. Yeah, I think this really kind of shines. I'll also go 0. I'll also note, following on one of my previous statements there, is that this combos really well with Gumption from what's it called? From Scarlet Keys. For dialing down the shroud as you need it.
I'm going to drop it down to an elder thing. I just haven't played this in solo and haven't felt the need. I feel like survivors have better tools for discovering clues than this. I might have been willing to give it a 0 back in the day simply because of the direct damage, but I feel like survivors, their card pool is so strong now that most of the holes they ever had have been plugged long ago, and this thing just doesn't do enough in solo to warrant a slot. Now, I could see it getting a bless token in some decks where if you're able to recur it with somebody like Yorick, or now with Daryl, who is all about lowering shroud values. Maybe there's something there, but yeah, this isn't the card you're building around in that deck. It's just happens to work well with what Daryl already wants to do. So
I'd say with this thing, like, if you're gonna try to build a deck that wants to recur old keyrings, say sit down and like think it through and have Lantern on the table while you're thinking, because you can burn a lot of actions just playing with keyrings, like playing the keyring over and over. Where the Lantern, you don't have to play it over and over. I think that's my tip of the day.
The next card we're going to talk about is Madame Labranche, Mysterious Benefactress. She's a 2-cost asset with an intellect skill icon, ally, and patron trait. As a free triggered ability, if you have no cards in your hand, exhaust Madame Labranche, draw 1 card. Or as a free triggered ability, if you have no resources, exhaust Madame Labranche, gain 1 resource. She has 2 health, 2 sanity, and takes up an ally slot. I will readily admit that this is one of the cards I wholly underestimated when she was released. She is very, very good in especially the survivor decks at the time, where you had somebody like Ashcan Pete, who can basically discard cards to ready Duke. So you tend to run with a very low number of cards in your hand, as well as Dark Horse decks and stuff like that. She just slots in so nicely into those that she's hard to turn down in those particular decks. Thoughts on Madame Labranche?
Man, she is so good.
Oh yeah.
Like, even if you don't even intend to build your deck around Madame Labranche, you can very easily find yourself in a situation where you just spend 2 resources every turn. And you just use it to generate an extra resource, like you would with a Renfield or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. No, she's great. The sanity and the health soak are really nice for the cost as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I gotta admit. The ideal play is like turn 1, you play a 3-cost asset, then you play Lebranch, then you recharge a resource, and you feel like $1 million at that point. You just paid 1 for 2 of both soaks, and you feel like $1 million. Yeah.
And
So,
yeah, and then there are times, especially in Survivor, where you don't have a lot of card draw, where you're gonna empty your hand out, and then Madame Labranche is
There you
just
go.
there to, kind of drip feed you some extra cards, which is really nice.
Yeah, she's just efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course there's the combo with Fire Axe, where you can spend down your resources and without fear, because you know that Madame Labranche will give you 1, and then you'll get 1 during upkeep, and so you can be back up to use your Fire Axe again. Yeah, she just does so many things well. It's just like if you need cards to pitch to Ready Duke, or you just need an extra card, she does that very well. And then, of course, if you're spending down your resources using Fire Axes, or what is it, the Mariner's Compass now, she slots very nicely into that. There's also, she works well with that Survivor skill that requires you to have very few cards in your hand that gains.
Last chance.
Last chance.
Oh, yeah.
You can
have like 5 wild icons.
You can
with that card in hand. It's
5
sweet.
wild icons, and especially if you top deck it with her, it's just like, hey.
I think we would be remiss to not mention Composures, any of the Talons, or Cornered as well. Like, holy, she is so good with Cornered.
Yeah, you're right. One thing I'd also like to mention is that when, let's say you commit your last card, and it's a card, and let's say it's like Resourceful, which will draw you a card, right? There's a window after you commit to sneak in a cheeky draw with Lebranch while you're at 0.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely the fact that she has free triggered abilities just make her so versatile, because you can sneak in those card draws and resource generation triggers during skill tests.
And I like how you don't, all these uses we're talking about, like some of them might refer to other specific cards, but for the most part, you can just run Lebranch and not combo her with anything, and like she'll get her mileage. You know what I mean? Like, you can just play the game and she'll do her thing. Yeah.
It's like, think about just if you activate her twice, she's basically paid for herself, regardless of how you consider that, right? It's like if you tap, if you exhaust her once to gain a resource, she's recouped a resource that you paid her. If you draw a card with her, she replaced the card that she took in your hand, and then you've also just happened to get 2 soak of each type, which is just.
Yep.
If we're gonna talk ratings, it's an easy Elder Sign for me.
I'd agree. In fact, the only thing I have to say about this is that they need some flavor text. She needs a little quote like, "Come on in, Sonny," or "Would you like a cup of tea, Sonny?" Or
I don't know. I kind of like that the picture says all that it needs to, really.
Mysterious benefactress. Yeah, she's got a cane.
She's like welcoming you into the house. It's cryptic, but it's welcoming at the same time.
There's definitely a distinct lack of American Girl dolls. Oh wait, no, there they are. If you squint, like you could see, there's a doll collection up on top of like the cabinet there. Oh, okay, so she's even got the little doll collection. Okay, yeah, it's kind of perfect. Yeah, A+, Elder Sign.
Yeah, she gets an Elder Sign from me as well.
Yeah,
can't really go wrong if you're looking for a Survivor ally. I mean, that's the problem, is that at the time, you had Peter Sylvester and her competing for the ally slot, which makes charisma appealing if you want to go that route. And but if you're playing one of those decks where you're basically using the cards in your hand as resources, either for a card like Cornered to power skill tests or to Ready Duke, stuff like that, she will get you the extra cards that you need to do that, which is phenomenal. That's going to do it for our look at the first batch of cards from the Path to Carcosa Investigator Expansion for Survivors. Let us know in the comments down below what you think. Any final thoughts on this bunch?
Very solid batch of level 0 cards for Survivor.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, like the pool, the Survivor card pool got better when when these came out. just immediately.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromleng@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromleng. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.